October 1944, Aachen, Germany. The battle for Aachen was the first time American troops entered a German city. It wasn't a battle of maneuvers. It was a knife fight in a phone booth, room to room, cellar to cellar. Sergeant Jack Buck Miller stood in the rain outside a shattered apartment complex. He wasn't carrying an M1 Garand like his men. He was carrying a relic from the previous war, the Winchester Model 1897. It looked medieval. It had a perforated steel heat shield over the barrel so you didn't burn your hand when the gun got hot, and a 16-inch bayonet lug on the front. But the most terrifying feature wasn't visible. It was internal. Modern shotguns have a safety disconnector. You have to pull the trigger for each shot. The Model 1897 did not. It possessed a capability called slam fire. If you held the trigger down and just pumped the fore end back and forth, the gun would fire as fast as you could move your arm. 6 rounds of 12-gauge double-aught buckshot in under 2 seconds. Each shell contained 9 .33 caliber lead balls. That meant 54 projectiles filling a hallway in a heartbeat. It was a meat grinder designed to be held in human hands.
The death order. Miller checked his pockets. He carried brass-hulled buckshot shells. Paper hulls would swell in the wet weather and jam the gun. He knew the risk. It wasn't just about jamming. The German High Command hated this weapon. During World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm II tried to get it banned by the Geneva Convention. He called it barbaric and causing unnecessary suffering. The Nazis revived that hatred. Intelligence reports confirmed a new order from the SS. Any American prisoner found in possession of a shotgun or shotgun ammunition is to be executed immediately without trial. Miller was carrying a death sentence in his pocket. If he was captured, he wouldn't go to a POW camp. He would go against a wall. He looked at his squad. They were terrified of the building ahead. It was a concrete nest of MG-42 machine guns. "Stay behind me." Miller racked the slide. Chuck! The sound was loud, mechanical, and unmistakable. "And don't slip on the mess I'm about to make."
They approached the building. The front door was barricaded. Miller signaled to his breacher. A soldier placed a shape charge on the hinges. Boom! The door fell inward. Dust billowed out. Usually, you throw a grenade, but grenades take 4 seconds to explode. Miller didn't wait. He stepped into the dust. The hallway was narrow. At the far end, 2 German soldiers were manning a sandbag position. They raised their K9 8K rifles. They were too slow. Miller slammed the pump. Boom! Ch-chuck! Boom! He didn't aim. You don't aim a trench gun. You point it. The first blast hit the sandbags, shredding the burlap. The second blast hit the Germans. At close range, buckshot doesn't make small holes. It removes tissue. The kinetic energy lifted the soldiers off their feet and threw them backward as if they had been hit by a truck. The sound inside the hallway was deafening. It wasn't the sharp crack of a rifle. It was the roar of a cannon. "Clear!" Miller shouted, ejecting a smoking hull. They moved to the staircase. This is the fatal funnel, the most dangerous spot in urban combat. From the floor above, a German stick grenade dropped down. It bounced on the steps. Clank, clank. "Grenade!" Miller didn't dive. He swung the butt of his heavy shotgun like a baseball bat. He hit the grenade mid-air, batting it back up the stairs. It exploded on the landing above. Screams followed. "Move up!" Miller roared. He took the stairs 2 at a time. He held the trigger down, slam fire mode. He crested the landing. 3 SS soldiers were waiting in the room. Miller pumped his arm like a piston. Boom, boom, boom. 3 shots in 1 second. The room was filled with lead and smoke. The speed of the fire was psychologically breaking.
The Germans didn't understand how a bolt-action world could produce such a volume of fire. Miller stood amidst the carnage, smoke pouring from the heat shield of his gun. His barrel was glowing hot. He had just cleared a fortified position in 5 seconds, alone.
Miller moved into the bedroom. An SS officer was hiding behind an overturned table. He held a Luger, but he was shaking too much to aim. Miller leveled the shotgun at the officer's chest. The German looked at the perforated heat shield. He looked at the massive bore. His eyes went wide with recognition. Barbarian, the German shouted. That is forbidden. It is against the rules. Miller didn't speak German, but he understood the tone. The Nazi was quoting the Hague Convention while standing in a city his leader had destroyed. My rule book, he racked the slide to show the chamber was loaded, says you lose. He didn't shoot. He butt-stroked the officer in the jaw with the solid walnut stock of the shotgun. The German went down, unconscious. Miller checked his pockets. He was down to 3 shells. "Conserve ammo," he yelled to his squad. "We have to hold this floor until the tanks arrive."
The Germans counterattacked. They knew the Americans were trapped on the 2nd floor. A squad of Volksgrenadiers charged up the back stairs. Miller fired. Boom, 1 down. He pumped. Boom, 2 down. He pumped again. Boom, 3 down. He pumped. Click. The magazine tube was empty. The remaining 2 Germans heard the click. They smiled. They raised their rifles, bayonets fixed. They thought the American was helpless. They were wrong. Miller reached to his belt and pulled out the M1917 bayonet. This wasn't a modern short knife. It was a 17-inch sword blade. He snapped it onto the lug at the end of the shotgun. Clack! Suddenly, the empty shotgun became a 5-foot-long spear. The Germans hesitated. They had never seen a bayonet that long on a shotgun. Miller didn't wait. He lunged. He parried the first German's rifle and drove the long blade through the man's chest. The reach of the shotgun gave him the advantage. The second German tried to run, but Miller swung the gun like a halberd, slashing the man's leg. The trench gun was dangerous even when it was dry.
The Germans realized they couldn't take the stairs. The devil with the shotgun was unstoppable in close quarters, so they decided to change the environment. Outside, a German Flammenwerfer team moved into position. "Burn 'em out," the German commander ordered. A stream of liquid fire smashed through the ground floor windows. The old wooden floorboards caught fire instantly. The staircase turned into a chimney. Smoke began to fill the 2nd floor, thick, black, choking smoke. Miller coughed, wrapping a wet rag around his face. "We can't go down," a private yelled. "The stairs are gone." They were trapped. Fire below, Germans outside. Miller ran to the window. It was barred with iron security grates. He looked at the hinges of the grate. They were rusty. He had reloaded 2 shells. "Back up," Miller shouted. He placed the muzzle of the shotgun against the hinges. Boom, boom. The solid slug shattered the iron and the masonry. The grate hung loose. Miller kicked it out. It fell to the street below. "We jump," Miller ordered. "Aim for the awning of the shop below." They tumbled out of the window, crashing through the canvas awning of a bakery, landing on the cobblestones. They were alive, but they were in the middle of the street. A German machine gun nest at the end of the block opened fire. Bullets sparked off the pavement. They scrambled behind a destroyed tram car. Miller checked his ammo pouch. Empty. He checked his men. They were low on ammo, too. And coming down the street was a German SDKFZ 251 half-track. Miller looked at the shotgun.
It was hot, dirty, and empty. But then he saw a crate of German potato masher grenades lying near an enemy ache. He grabbed the grenades. "I can't shoot," Miller grinned, wiping soot from his face, "but I can still pitch." He wasn't going to use the shotgun to shoot. He was going to use it to deliver a message. Miller pulled the cord on the German potato masher grenade. He didn't throw it at the half-track's armor. That would do nothing. He waited. He counted to 3. Then he threw it in a high arc, aiming for the open top of the vehicle's troop compartment. It was a perfect strike. Crump! The explosion inside the steel box was devastating. Smoke poured out. The half-track swerved and crashed into a lamppost. "Push!" Miller screamed. He led his men forward. They were out of ammo, fighting with knives and shovels. It was primal warfare. But as Miller rounded the corner, he ran straight into the main German force. A rifle butt smashed into his face. The world went black.
Miller woke up on his knees. He was in a courtyard. 3 of his men were lined up beside him, hands behind their heads. An SS officer stood over them. He was holding Miller's Winchester shotgun. He looked at it with pure hatred. "You know the order," the officer said in perfect English. "No prisoners with shotguns." He threw the shotgun into the mud. He drew his Luger. "You are not soldiers," the German spat. "You are gangsters." He aimed at Miller's forehead. Miller looked at the barrel of the Luger. He didn't beg. He spat a tooth onto the German's polished boot. "Go ahead, Fritz," Miller growled, "but you better make sure I'm dead." The German tightened his finger on the trigger. Miller closed his eyes. Rumbo! The ground shook, not from a bomb, from an engine. The brick wall behind the Germans exploded inward. A massive steel beast crashed through the masonry, an M4 Sherman tank. The Germans turned in terror. The tank's coaxial machine gun roared. The SS officer was cut in half before he could pull the trigger. The courtyard turned into a slaughterhouse, but this time the Americans were the hammer. The tank commander popped the hatch. "Need a lift, boys?" Miller stood up. He wiped the blood from his eyes. He walked over to the dead SS officer. He didn't take the Luger. He picked up his shotgun from the mud. He wiped the dirt off the heat shield. He checked the action. Click-clack. It still worked. "Thanks for the ride," Miller said to the tank, "but I've got work to do." The Winchester Model 1897 didn't retire after WW2. It went to Korea. It went to Vietnam. The Germans called it barbaric. The Americans called it effective. In the jungles of Vietnam, it was still the best weapon for close encounters. Today, the U.S. Marines still carry shotguns, the Benelli M4, for breaching doors and clearing rooms. The technology has changed, but the philosophy remains the same. When the enemy is close, when there is no time to aim, and when you absolutely, positively need to clear a hallway, nothing beats a shotgun. Sergeant Miller survived the war. He brought his trench gun home. He never used it for hunting. He hung it over his fireplace, a reminder that sometimes to defeat evil, you have to be a little barbaric yourself. If you enjoyed this story of American firepower, hit that like button. Subscribe for more history with the safeties off.